Certainly suggests they now have some information that they may be ready to share.
Within the last hour, the authorities in Los Angeles have been giving more details about their investigation into the deaths of the actor Gene Hackman and his wife, Betsy Arakawa.
FBI just found a secret tunnel under Gene Hackman's house. And let's just say, what they saw inside had them questioning everything. This whole thing keeps getting weirder by the minute, especially with the feds now crawling all over it.
Right now at 11 a.m., breaking news in the death of legendary actor Gene Hackman. ABC News has obtained the search warrant for his New Mexico home. We'll tell you what authorities found when they arrived.
At this point, it's obvious. Gene wasn't just some retired Hollywood legend. He was up to something insanely shocking.
One of Hackman's own movies captivating the country.
Dude, this Gene Hackman story is so crazy.
And since then, Gene Hackman's death has become one of the most obsessively discussed topics of 2025. It's not just another Hollywood tragedy. It's one of the most suspicious, chilling cases in recent history. People die, celebrities die, but when the FBI gets involved, that's when you know something much bigger is happening. Because let's be honest, they don't waste time on standard cases. They don't step in for simple drug overdoses, accidents, or even homicides. They intervene when there's something much deeper, something that threatens to expose something bigger. So why were federal agents raiding Gene Hackman's $4 million New Mexico estate? What exactly made this case so explosive that it went beyond just police involvement? Turns out, the biggest twist wasn't how Hackman died, it was what was found beneath his house.
And that an initial autopsy, along with an extensive investigation of the home, has all but ruled out carbon monoxide poisoning.
Because hidden under layers of secrecy, beneath the perfectly manicured lawns and high-security gates, was something no one knew existed. Not his fans, not the public, not even those who worked in the house. A secret underground tunnel, a passageway that had been completely erased from history, missing from all blueprints, as if someone had deliberately kept it hidden. And the moment agents stepped inside, everything changed. The tunnel was dark, damp, and eerie. The kind of place that doesn't just feel abandoned, it feels like it was meant to stay hidden forever. The moment they entered, they saw old wooden crates, some rotting, some untouched, stacked against the walls. Dust coated everything, but here's where it gets weird. Some things looked like they had been disturbed recently. Inside the crates, the first major discovery. Old, faded photographs, the kind that make you stop and stare. The people in the pictures? Unidentified. Their faces, blank expressions, unfamiliar, almost ghost-like. The locations? Untraceable. Some photos showed secret meetings, dark rooms, large gatherings, people in the background blurred out, like someone didn't want them identified.
If there would have been a gas leak, I think we would have still found it.
Then came the files, bound in aged leather, filled with cryptic notes. Some were scribbled so chaotically they barely made sense, while others looked like detailed records of something long forgotten. Names, dates, coded phrases. Some pages were even ripped out, like someone had been here before, removing pieces of the story. And then, tucked inside one of the boxes, personal effects. A vintage pocket watch, a few pieces of expensive jewelry, and a leather notebook. Handwritten, messy, almost like someone had been documenting something in a rush. But here's the kicker. None of these items seem to belong to Hackman. So if this tunnel had been hidden under his house, if these objects were buried here, but none of them were his.
Now, of course, the biggest question here is the cause or causes of death. We know that authorities had said that it could take weeks for toxicology results to be released. We don't know if they've now expedited that, and we're going to get those results today. But the mere fact.
Then whose were they? And who was trying so hard to keep them buried? Then came the biggest shock of all. As agents moved deeper inside the tunnel, their flashlights hit something that made them stop cold. A door. Not just any door. An old rusted iron door. Heavy. Bolted shut. And what stood out the most? No handle. No keyhole. No visible way to open it. Someone didn't just lock this door, they made sure no one could ever open it again.
As soon as someone dies, the clock starts. And unfortunately, that clock is decomposition.
And here's where things get even more disturbing. When the FBI examined the locking mechanism, they found something off. It had been tampered with, which means someone else had already been here, and they either got in or made sure no one else ever could. That raises a bigger question. Who found this tunnel before the FBI? And what did they take? Because we already know one thing for certain. Some files were missing. Whatever was once buried in this tunnel, someone else knew about it long before Hackman died, and they made sure the most important pieces were gone. But here's the thing. Hackman was no fool. He was known for being sharp, careful, private. If this tunnel was under his house, there's no way he didn't know about it. So why didn't he do anything about it? Or worse, what if he was trying to do something about it right before he died? Because 4 hours before his death, Hackman's heart monitoring device recorded something disturbing, a spike, an extreme shock. His body registered immense stress, like he had seen something that pushed his body into full panic mode. And then, exactly 10 days later, his mummified body was discovered. Not just his, but his wife's. Gene's body showed signs of extreme preservation, while his wife's was found near a heater, decomposed beyond normal levels.
Now, 10 days is a long time. As the body decomposes, you have to think about other things deteriorating, like medications, toxins.
10 days. And somehow, no one knew where they were? No one checked the house? The only reason they were found? A maintenance worker stumbled upon them, which means whoever, or whatever, was involved in their deaths made sure they stayed hidden as long as possible. And when the FBI arrived, they weren't just looking for Hackman's killer. They were looking for who or what had been in that tunnel before them. And judging by the missing files, they were already too late.
It seems like we're doing a reverse timeline. We're doing a timeline from the time of death and the autopsy and the results, and we're going to start working our way backward.
The discovery of the tunnel beneath Gene Hackman's estate has led to a flood of speculation, each theory more unsettling than the last. It's one thing to find an underground passageway. It's another to realize that it had a purpose no one can explain. The question isn't just why it was there, but who was using it and what for. FBI sources, speaking under anonymity, have hinted that this wasn't just an old, forgotten part of the estate. It was something functional, something deliberate. But for what? That's the question that keeps leading to more disturbing possibilities.
To some degree, they have now answered many questions, but investigators have been trying to piece together the couple's final movements in that week, looking at CCTV.
One of the strongest theories comes from former law enforcement consultant Daniel Harrington, who has spent over a decade investigating high-profile crime scenes. According to him, the layout and structure of the tunnel suggest it wasn't just built for storage, it was an escape route. The tunnel's positioning, entry points, and overall design indicate it could have allowed someone to move in and out of the estate undetected. But was it built for Hackman? Was it meant for him to escape unseen? Or was it built for someone else to come and go without being noticed? FBI reports confirm that certain sections of the tunnel appeared to have been reinforced at some point in the last 20 years, meaning it wasn't just an abandoned relic. Someone, at some point in the last 2 decades, had access to it.
Officials calling the death suspicious while saying there were no signs of foul play, and that an initial autopsy along with an extensive investigation of the home has all but ruled out carbon monoxide poisoning.
If there would have been a gas leak, I think we would have still found it.
This morning, questions also remain about the couple's dog that died, originally identified by authorities as a German Shepherd, but now believed to be their 12-year-old Australian Kelpie mix, Xena.
Another leading theory is that this was a storage site, but not just for valuables or personal belongings. The question is, what exactly was being hidden here? Some analysts, including former military intelligence officer Elliot Grayson, believe the tunnel could have been a vault for classified documents. The files that were discovered inside, bound in aged leather, filled with cryptic writing, some pages torn out entirely, hint at something much bigger than Hackman himself. If these weren't his personal records, then whose were they? And more importantly, why had someone taken certain documents before the FBI arrived? Investigators have refused to comment on what exactly was in those missing pages. But according to journalist Samantha Corbin, who has covered federal investigations for over 15 years, the government's silence is the biggest red flag of all. When information disappears from an active crime scene, Corbin said in an interview, it usually means there's something there they don't want the public to see. Then there's the question of whether this was a hiding place for contraband. A storage vault doesn't necessarily mean it was holding classified documents. It could have been a repository for something much more dangerous. The presence of scientific tools and unfamiliar devices found among the crates suggests that whoever used this tunnel wasn't just hiding papers and valuables.
That they have announced this press conference. It's happening with multiple agencies, the fire, the sheriff's department, the health department, and the medical examiner's office.
FBI forensic teams have reportedly examined some of the objects found inside, but to this day, they have not publicly released their findings. Speculation has grown that the site could have been linked to illegal research, underground experiments, or even evidence of black market activity. And if that's the case, was Hackman involved? Or was he simply the man living above something he wasn't meant to find? One of the most disturbing elements of this entire case is the strange markings found on the walls. Experts in cryptographic analysis have suggested that these symbols could be part of an encrypted system, a form of communication not meant for outsiders to understand. Former NSA analyst Richard Vaughn has gone on record stating that some of these markings bear similarities to codes used in classified intelligence operations. But the markings aren't the only clue pointing toward a deeper secret. Among the items discovered in the tunnel were several electronic devices, some in non-working condition, others appearing to be deliberately dismantled. FBI specialists have remained silent on what exactly these devices were used for, but some believe they were part of a covert surveillance system or an experimental project linked to advanced communications.
Certainly suggests they now have some information that they may be ready to share.
And then, of course, there's the missing piece, the part that makes this whole case feel like something straight out of a conspiracy thriller: the files. According to the FBI's initial inventory, certain documents were gone before agents even got there. There's no official word on what was taken, but insiders close to the investigation suggest that these weren't just random missing papers. They were targeted removals, the kind of information that someone didn't just stumble upon. They knew exactly what they were looking for, and they got to it first. The fact that someone had been inside that tunnel before the FBI even began their search raises the most critical question of all. Who knew about the tunnel before Hackman died?
Hello there. Within the last hour, the authorities in Los Angeles have been giving more details about their investigation into the deaths of the actor Gene Hackman.
Some believe that Hackman himself was getting close to uncovering whatever was hidden there. His heart monitor data shows extreme stress spikes hours before his death, indicating that he had experienced a massive physiological response, possibly from fear, shock, or even confrontation. But did he see something that night? Did he find the tunnel himself and realize too late what it actually was? The circumstances surrounding Gene Hackman's death would have already been unsettling on their own. But when the details of how he and his wife, Betsy Hackman, were finally emerged, the case turned from mysterious to outright chilling. Official reports state that their bodies were discovered 10 days after their deaths, but that fact alone raises immediate questions.
They say he died from heart disease after his wife passed away from a rare infectious illness.
Even more disturbing are the reports that Betsy Hackman had been investigating something dangerous before she died. Several sources, including independent journalist Carla Mendez, who has been closely following the case, have pointed to a series of articles and private correspondences that indicate Betsy had been digging into cases involving high-profile child abuse allegations tied to elite circles. While no official statements confirm exactly how deep she was in this research, her personal emails, some of which were leaked to the National Inquisitor just a week after their bodies were found, suggest that she had compiled information on individuals tied to powerful organizations, individuals with the means to make problems disappear. The emails show that she had reached out to at least 2 investigative reporters in the weeks leading up to her death, though neither responded before she was killed.
Officials believe he died a week after his wife. Well, I'm Avadi.
The official coroner's report, leaked through an anonymous law enforcement source on March 17, 2025, reveals even more unsettling details. Gene Hackman's heart monitoring implant recorded extreme stress levels precisely 4 hours before his official time of death. The data indicates that Hackman's body went into a state of intense panic, spiking his heart rate to levels associated with extreme fear responses. Experts in forensic pathology have pointed out that this kind of reaction doesn't happen randomly. It happens when a person is experiencing something that shocks them so deeply, their body begins to shut down. What did Hackman see in those last 4 hours? Did he come face to face with whoever or whatever was in that tunnel? And then, there's the way their bodies were found. Gene Hackman's body had already begun mummifying, something that only happens under specific conditions: low humidity, dry air, and most importantly, time. This means that by the time the bodies were found, he had already been dead for days, possibly longer than initial reports suggest. Meanwhile, Betsy's body was discovered near a heater, which had accelerated her decomposition at an unnatural rate. It's a grim detail, but an important one, because if the heater had been left on deliberately, it raises the possibility that someone wanted her body to deteriorate faster, making it harder to determine key details about how she died.
Uncommon to find someone down on the floor as part of a terminal collapse, so to speak, and that may very well have been what happened.
Even the way their deaths were reported is suspicious. Initial statements from law enforcement simply stated that the couple had been found deceased under unusual but inconclusive circumstances. It wasn't until days later, after independent investigators began asking questions, that details about the condition of their bodies were revealed. Why hold back that information? And more importantly, why did it take so long for authorities to even check on them? At a press briefing on March 21, 2025, FBI spokesperson Robert Calloway addressed the media, stating that the agency was investigating all possibilities and that their primary focus was on ensuring a thorough and complete examination of all relevant evidence. That statement, carefully worded and devoid of any meaningful information, did nothing to satisfy growing concerns. What exactly are they investigating? And if they know more than they're admitting, what is stopping them from revealing it? Perhaps the most unsettling aspect of all this is what hasn't been said. Because in cases like these, silence speaks louder than any official statement ever could. And right now, that silence is deafening. If you are also curious like me and want to know where the story ends, don't forget to like the video and hit subscribe below.